so glad you said that, because anger is anger and sadness is sadness. Oftentimes people want to minimize the anger and say, oh, that's just a sign of something else.
In betrayal trauma, anger, it is different. It's a different animal. In a lot of ways, it's intense, it's disorienting. And I'm wondering if we can just kind of keep unpacking that a little bit for our audience. Here's something I thought about, is that I've seen betrayed partners as I've experienced their anger. Part of it is like a righteous anger around injustice. And the reason why I wanted to start with that is because, and we can unpack this could take us in so many directions. Thank you for being patient with me, Crystal, as I get this incredibly long question out. I think it's important to validate the reality of like this righteous anger, because we also hear sometimes, oh, anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is this cover emotion for something else. Get underneath the anger, which I think that's possible, but it's not always true of anger. So just that was a lot to throw at you, but your thoughts on that?
I'm so glad you said that, because anger is anger and sadness is sadness, right?
Yeah.
And so you're right. Oftentimes people want to minimize the anger and say, oh, that's just a sign of something else. And although it may be complex and that might be true, I don't know. You probably see what I see. Anger is anger. And of course,
Yes.
I have anger myself, and I'm definitely not sad. I'm angry, right? And
Right.
so I did a survey last year with betrayed partners, and it was entitled a Betrayal Trauma Anger Survey. And it's interesting that you say that, because 95% of survey respondents said that betrayal is an injustice, right?
Wow.
And we know that anger comes up when, anger is that healthy emotion, Jake, that tells us something's not right.
That's right.
And so,
yes.
Of course, it is an injustice. Also, 87% were angry with themselves and blamed themselves for not knowing what the betrayer was doing behind their back. So that self-directed anger is a really significant part of the healing process as well. And, I created a 7-phase model. I started watching my partners and just started to take more notes and kind of see what they were going through with anger. So then I developed these 7 phases that are in the book that talk about the anger. And that first phase, which is the crisis, is what you're talking about, right? They are so shocked about the injustice. It's so overwhelming. And when something happens that's not supposed to happen, the brain can't take it in. Your brain literally is doing this, right? And so it starts to send you into that crazy with anger right from the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. I want to get into your phases, because I think that is, that's so helpful. It brings so much clarity. But before we do that, just one other thing, kind of intro wise, I want you to share about, and that's the metaphor that you use of the bull and the matador. How does that image reflect the experience of the betrayed partner?
Well, so at least it's interesting to me. I'll tell you how that
I thought it was.
Thank you. I think it's so interesting. So, and I explain this in detail in the book, and you'll see the cover of the book also has a matador and a bull.
Yes.
So what happened was I was starting to think about the cover for the book, and I thought about anger. And so I thought about seeing red. So then I thought, how can I bring seeing red into the betrayal trauma anger, right? Like I'm thinking about images and whatever. So I just started to do, seeing red, of course, is associated with the bull that charges the matador when they see the red, which is the myth, right? That we all think. And so I just started, I was sitting on my couch one evening and I just started researching a bullfight. And to make a long story short, there are several similarities between a matador and a bull and a betrayer and the betrayed. And what happens with the betrayed is it's an unfair fight, right? So when you're being betrayed, you are being abused, you're being deceived. Sometimes you're making major life decisions without all the information you should have. And so that's what's happening with the bull, right? The bull, before it comes out into the arena, is being um, deprived of food and water, is being stabbed with spikes. It is so disoriented by the time it comes into the ring, it seems like it's crazy. And that's how the betrayed partner is, right? When you
Yes.
realize that everything you knew isn't, what you thought wasn't, and you don't even know this person that you loved and adored and trusted with your whole sense of self, you feel crazy. You act
Yes.
and behave like you're crazy oftentimes. Whether we are suppressing anger or we are expressing anger, the trauma of discovering that you have been deceived by the person you trusted the most, it makes you act like a crazy person. Just
Right.
like that bull coming in the arena, and you think about the matador, right? He or she, it can be either, is dressed in this beautiful outfit. The
Yes.
crowd is cheering. It's supposed to be this brave, strong man or woman. And yet we look at the betrayer. Before discovery happens, at least in my practice, what I see with most people, and what's also my experience, is the betrayer is a man of strong spiritual character. Everybody loves them. They're generous financially. They are the person that people go to and look to, right? They are looked at and admired. And so I
Yes.
started off with that, right? I just started as I was researching. I'm like, wow, this really represents what happens with the betrayer and the betrayed.
It's, I thought it was a brilliant metaphor. I loved it. It made so much sense. And you've already, again, we're so in sync, Crystal, because you're already anticipating where I was going. I pulled a quote from your book. You're not crazy. You're angry, and you should be. And I think that metaphor, it just so validates that reality. Right. And you write about betrayal, blindness, and gaslighting, and how these dynamics keep the partner stuck in that shame, like that bull before it's let loose into the arena. And I'm just aware, I try to remind myself that sometimes we have listeners, and this might be their very first podcast to ever listen to on betrayal at all. Right. So I just want to take a minute. Betrayal, blindness, and gaslighting. Can you talk about that for just a second?
So, betrayal blindness is something that carries a lot of shame for partners. Partners, after discovery and they're coming to therapy and they're getting help, as they're looking back, they realize I ignored things. There were signs. I even discovered things and I let it go. And what
Yes.
happens is they come up with so much shame and self-directed anger. So what I explain is betrayal blindness is simply you're just so afraid of what if what you think is true. The consequences of what could happen if what you think is true is traumatizing.
That's right.
Who wants their whole life devastated? Who wants to lose 50% of their children? Who wants their financial situation to be changed? Nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced, right? And so
Yes. Right.
that what I try to use that betrayal blindness to just remind them of is that would be a natural response.
Yes.
When you're living your best life and things are going well and you have children, you have obligations, you have family, you have community, right? The thoughts of all of that being destroyed or upset or just the unknown fear of what could happen if what I suspect is true. So that's what we want to do. If you are listening and you have struggled, or maybe right now it hasn't been discovered, but you're suspicious, it's normal. It's normal to not want to face it. It's really
That's right.
scary to face it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need help to face it. So if you don't
Yeah.
have a coach or a therapist to talk to, maybe just start talking to somebody about what you suspect, so they
Yeah.
can help you to have some support with that.
Yeah, that's so good. And the one piece that I often add to that is when I'm talking to partners about this is also, when you just take a step back and think about it, there's nothing pathological about trusting your partner. In
Mm-mm.
fact, that would be the normal. I usually hate using that word, but here I'm okay with it. That seems like that should be okay to do. So there's nothing pathological about it. And yes, what would it mean if? Okay. And how about gaslighting?
So gaslighting is crazy making, right?
Yeah.
What gaslighting really is it's when someone is trying to change your perception of reality. And so you may ask your partner something. So for example, I have an example in the book of a couple that I've seen, and he came back from a trip and she found a bra in his suitcase. And he said, oh, well, I must have just, when I scooped my clothes up off the bed, it must have been a bra from the person that was in the hotel room before me. And she's like, no, that doesn't sound rational to me. And then what he started doing was, what are you accusing me of? What's wrong with you? You're always suspicious. So in other words, he starts to gaslight her like
Yes.
she's the problem. There's
Right.
something wrong with her, right? He hasn't done anything wrong, right? There's something wrong with her. So then you start to question yourself. Okay, well, could the maid have missed it and he just scooped up his clothes? So
Wow.
gaslighting starts to make you question yourself. It comes from that 1944 movie with Cary Grant, right? And
Yes.
there's a husband that's trying to drive his wife crazy so he can get her
Yes.
money, her family jewels. And
Right.
that's what it's all about. Let me try to make you think you're crazy so that I can keep doing what I'm doing secretly. And so that's what they'll do. The gaslighting is just setting you on. I always say it's like they're setting you on fire and then asking you why you're burning, right?
Oh,
Why are you upset? They just set you on fire, but why are you burning? Like, why are you
yeah.
so upset? Like, what's wrong with you? Why would you even
Yeah.
question me? And so, yeah, that's a very important part too that makes you feel like you're crazy, but you're
Right.
not crazy. You're being gaslit. And that's where you get all that self-directed anger, because then you start to be angry at yourself. You're angry and confused. You can be irritable quite a bit, but then you can't trust your intuition either when you find out like, oh, I knew it, after discovery, then you're like, I knew it. Right.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things, Jake, that just contribute to making the betrayed partner really feel like she or he is crazy.
Yes.
And for years in our field, this, unfortunately, for many years, the betrayed partner was pathologized,
That's
told
right.
they had a personality disorder. They were angry and bitter. They just needed to forgive. The problem is them, right? That they need to create. This is something that just burns me when I hear somebody say, oh, well, the partner just needs to create safety for their betrayer to tell them the truth. Right?
Right.
Telling the truth because how many therapists and podcasts I've heard that on where no, the betrayer
Right.
needs to learn how to tell the truth no matter what the truth is. And whether the partner gets upset or not is irrelevant to being told the truth. So yeah, lots of crazy
Yes.
making.
Yeah. And, and these are concepts, I'm familiar with, but even right now, as I'm listening to you talk about them and unpack them, one of the voices in my head, yes, I said voices, there's several of them, but one of them was saying like, of course someone would be angry when when all of that, when that bubble bursts, right? When the smoke dissipates and reality comes crashing in. Oh my goodness, of course I would be angry. Yeah. So let's talk about your calming phases. I love a good acronym, and this is a good acronym. Okay, I my clients get sick of all my acronyms, but I love this, and so you already talked about crisis a little bit, but let's kind of revisit that. So the and I guess first I should say this: these are not linear phases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
You're absolutely right. Of course, the first phase you enter into would be the crisis phase, but you can come back to that phase at any time
yes,
along the journey. So
right.
yes, it is nonlinear.
Yeah. So as we move through these, even though we'll take them in the order that spells calming, I just want our listeners to know it's not like this nice, neat, tidy process, unfortunately, right? So crisis. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So describe the crisis phase and what the anger particularly is like there.
So when you enter into that first phase, that's after discovery, and obviously that's the crisis phase. When I did the survey for the book, the word that was used repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again was devastating. It's like
Yes.
your life is just devastated. You're devastated in every aspect. So you get sent into the crisis phase. So yes, I use the word calming to show you the different phases. In the crisis phase, what's happening is your anger is out of control. It's literally out of control. And then when it gets out of control, it's shameful. A lot of times I learn
Yes.
some of the things that the betrayed partner's doing when they're angry. I learn it from the betrayer. And trust me, they're afraid to tell me sometimes, right?
Yes.
Because they're
Yes.
like, hey, I deserve it. Whatever they want to do to me, I don't care. I deserve it. And so as clinicians, we have that difficult time trying to be able to say to the betrayed partner, listen, you have every right to be angry and want to hurt them back, but you can't, right? That's not
That's
the
right.
right. And so what happens though is, of course, they get upset. I mean, I've heard story after story where they're hitting, punching, cutting, throwing, breaking things,
Yeah.
doing, just a lot of things they would never do, by the way. They
That's
would
right.
never do had they not just had their life
That's
turned
right.
upside down. It's not their normal
Yeah.
character.
Which is why they feel shame
Mhm.
afterwards so often. And then the shame can turn into that self-directed anger that you were talking about. So what word would you have for a listener who says, that's me, that's where I am. My anger, it is uncontrollable right now. I am doing these things that I do not want to do.
So I have a lot of information in the book for you about we don't want to associate anger with aggression. And
Mm,
for years, sometimes in anger management in the past, that would be promoted. Go to this room and break a bunch of stuff, break stuff for
right.
you feel better. So there's research out now that has been out. And of course, I've always promoted, we want to associate the brain with anger to calming. We
Mm,
want to calm the brain and nervous system down. And so I give a lot of information about that in the book. But during that crisis phase, first of all, just know that that's normal. It's
thank
normal
you.
to act and feel crazy. But what you want to do in that first initial phase is you really have to focus on self-care, because you're not going to be able to do, I can give you skills all day long. You're not able to do a lot of those. I mean, I recognize
Right.
that, right? But what we have to do is focus on support and self-care during that
Okay.
crisis.
Yeah. Okay. And then the A is awareness. So unpack the awareness for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you move from that crisis into awareness, usually after you get what we call a full disclosure. So when
Mm,
you're in the crisis, you're staying up all night long searching for the truth. Like, what happened?
right.
What did you want to ask questions? Then you're moving into awareness because now you have a full disclosure. Now you've become aware of what's been going on, right? And so now your anger moves from being out of control to intense. So there's a lot of shame that you carry into that awareness because now you're ashamed of what your partner's done. You're ashamed if you stay, you're ashamed if you have to leave, but you have now the awareness where now you can start taking a look at boundaries, right? So in that
Yes.
awareness phase, we want to start establishing boundaries. Now that we have information, and you're coming out of the uncontrollable. That I want to say though that uncontrollable follows you through several phases at times,
Sure.
but at
Sure.
first it's just all uncontrollable, right? So when you're
Mm,
in that awareness phase, you're really looking at, okay, now that I know what I know, now I can establish boundaries. Now I know patterns of behavior. Now I know things where I have to be safe. And so you move into that and trigger management.
mm,
Some women and men are triggered all day long. It's
yes.
so painful. They don't want to be, they don't want to have to be dealing with it, but they can't get away from it. Sometimes it's so hard. So I developed a protocol for managing intrusive thoughts. And that is given in the book. And then also just lots of things about managing the triggers. And then, of course, establishing boundaries in that awareness phase.
Yes. Okay. I love that. And so next, leveling. You talk about leveling.
Yes. So you start to move into that leveling phase where what you're doing is your anger is now more sporadic. So when you start to level out, right, you're starting to, manage your triggers. You're starting to have boundaries. It's not as uncontrollable anymore. You're starting to be able to use some skills. So it's kind of leveling out. But you know how it is, as soon as you start to feel like maybe I'm a little not crazy, then all of a sudden it hits you out of the blue. So it's more sporadic. As you're calming down, then you'll just be blindsided by it. Like, oh, I was doing so good. And then I just had an anger outburst. There's new things that you need during that leveling stage, like healthy communication skills. You also need to be assessed for mental and physical health diagnoses. So during this time, you're not yourself. You're going to be impacted physically and mentally. Sometimes you're going to need some medication to help you temporarily through this time, maybe to sleep, maybe to see if there's any other diagnoses going on. So just really, as you're leveling out, just taking care of yourself a little bit more holistically is going to help you when that anger overwhelms you.
Okay. That's so helpful. M is for management.
Yes. So by the time we're coming out of that leveling off stage, we're heading into more of the management phase. And so during that time, you're just getting an increased understanding of anger. This is when you would really be working with your therapist or coach to do a deeper dive around anger. In the book, I have a whole chapter on so many reasons to be angry. Let me just tell you, there's probably thousands.
Yes.
I list a lot in there. There's a lot more. But here's the key about this is that I defined anger. I have a definition of it. And the importance about the definition that I developed is anger is immediate and then it's unfolding over time. So you're angry about this now. You don't even know all the other things you're going to be angry about, right? So it progresses, Jake, as you know, where we can't just, a lot of times people will say, well, how long is it going to take for you not to be so angry? Or like,
right.
why are you still angry? Well, the reason that you're still angry is because there's so many more things to be angry about.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
ongoing and unfolding. And so just having grace for that, if you know a betrayed partner or if you're a clinician working with them, this is so important. You have to really show them grace and kindness because that anger is unfolding over a long period of time. There's new things to be angry about, all of the loss that they've had too, on top of everything they're having to deal with. And so during this anger management phase, not only are you taking a deeper dive into the anger, but you're also doing your deep trauma work. Okay. So every betrayed partner that I have seen, right? Some people probably don't need to go to therapy, but I think most do. And the way that I explain it is, think about if you were in a really bad car accident. Sure. You might get up and walk away and feel like, hey, I'm fine. I don't think I'm okay. But it's still a good idea to go get checked out. You don't know what's happening internally. You could be bleeding, other things. So if you have been betrayed and maybe you're handling it well and you have good support, it's still a good idea to go see a therapist because you're going to address the betrayal trauma and then also your whole life history of trauma. And Jake, I'm sure you see this. You do intensives as well. Oftentimes, both the betrayer and the betrayed have unresolved trauma from the past. Sure. So in addition to the betrayer being betrayed by being caught and the betrayed being traumatized by finding the information out, they probably both have other things in their history. So during that management phase, that's the deeper dive into the trauma work and the anger work.
Yes. Okay. That was wonderful. And I can absolutely see how what you just described of doing that deeper work leads into this next phase of intuition, which is beautiful to watch unfold. So can you talk about the intuition phase?
Yes. This is such an important thing. I don't think I've ever met with a betrayed partner that didn't say, I can't trust my own intuition now.
That's right. That's right.
I can't trust myself. And
that's right.
I actually have a quote in the book from one of my clients. She said this so perfectly when she said to her husband, you turned me against myself.
Ooh. Yeah.
Now I can't trust myself. So it's not bad enough that I can't trust you. But,
Yeah.
oftentimes, and so I really explain in the book, I really value the partner's experience. And I'm not going to argue with you when you say I can't, trust myself.
Sure.
So what I do is I give a lot of examples in there and questions that you can ask yourself. What contributed to maybe why you stayed, maybe why you picked the partner? All these questions you ask yourself, right? I'm over here, like I'm sure you are, going, oh, but you didn't do anything wrong, right?
Right. Sure. Yes. That's what we want to say.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. And
Right.
it's so true, but I want them to be able to explore what in my life did contribute to some of the way I'm feeling. Maybe I accepted the unacceptable at times. What contributed to that? They ask the question, why am I staying? Of course, I'm like you. I always say, you don't ever have to regret loving somebody who's unlovable at times. You don't ever have to regret giving somebody the opportunity to learn from what they did wrong and earn your trust back, right? You don't have to regret showing grace for that. But obviously, if they continue to abuse you and betray you, then we're having another conversation. But betrayed partners, they want to stay for lots of reasons. And I want to remind everybody too that the betrayer has a lot of good qualities. There are reasons that decision to stay or leave is so complex.
Yes.
Because this betrayer needs help. Nobody lives their life saying, hey, I want to go destroy everybody I love and disrupt our life.
Right.
And, so understanding that it's okay to stay. In fact, I want to say 85% of the survey respondents were actually staying in the relationship with their partner. And so most people want to stay. They've invested their life in this relationship.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll just say, with the time I got to spend with the book, I thought those questions, I mean, I was thinking of clients who I was like, they need these, because you're right. Those words, I want to say you didn't do anything wrong. I want to say it wasn't your fault. But if you don't trust yourself, you don't trust yourself. Mm-hmm. And what I've seen is when betrayed partners will engage those sorts of hard questions. They're hard questions, but there is so much to gain on the other side of that. And typically what I see happen is when they restore trust with themselves, it is a rock solid trust, like way beyond whatever they had before.